Smile, be, chat, join for networking.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Michele from I'm Your PA, and I would like to share a story with you. Now, my foresight is called pull your knickers up and box on. Normally I do foresights all about networking, but I was asked to do this story to share where I came from. So I'd like to share my story, and I'd like to say it's been an interesting life, because you don't get to this age without having a few ups and downs. Now, I could have called this Shit Happens, Get Over It. But you'll understand as I go through why it is that I decided to call it Pull Your Knickers Up and Box On. I had a good childhood, lots of happy memories, lots of holidays with parents. And I remember my first day at school. And unbeknown to me, that day was to change my life. Because my first day at school, my mum took me to the school gates, and where all the other little kiddies were there crying, she said, "Michele, there's a little girl over there crying. Go and look after her. She's missing her mum." So it's like, "Yeah, okay, Mum," and off I went. And I went to look after that little girl. So fast forward 14 years. And I'm starting at, in fact, 14 years? Yeah, 14 years. And I'm starting at Nottingham University School of Nursing. Surprise, surprise, I ended up as a nurse. Which was great, and I had some great times as a nurse. And it was shortly after I qualified that I met my first husband. Yes, there have been more than one. We'll come back to that. So I met my first husband, and I was nursing in neurosurgery, and he suggested that I went into sales. He said, "You'd be really good in sales, Shell." And I'm like, okay. So I got myself an interview with a company that sold scientific equipment. Now, what I should say is Roger was head of biochemistry. He was also 17 years older than me. I was 23, he was 40. Mother wasn't too impressed. So I get myself this job, and I'm presented by this very overweight director whose buttons are bulging. And he said, "And so what makes you think you'd be any good as a medical rep?" And I said, "What, with my good looks, charm, wit and personality? How could I fail?" "Tell you what, give me 6 months. If I'm no good, chuck me out." I thought I can always go back to nursing. So that's what I did. Now, Roger and I lived together for about 8 years, and we got married 2 o'clock on the 23rd of April 1994, St George's Day. We've already had some reference to dragons, and I think I was referred to as the dragon that day. But yeah, so we got married, and I did really well in sales. I managed to get away from the centrifuges, went on into anaesthetic products, and ended up in neurosurgical products, working for J&J, one of the largest, well, I think they still are, the largest healthcare corporation worldwide. And it was fabulous. I won award after award. I went off to St Lucia. I went to Florida in a penthouse suite. I flew by helicopter. I had boats chartered around the Grenadines. It was an amazing life. But it all took its toll. And I found I had a very possessive husband who was accusing me constantly of having affairs. So in the end, I did. And I left very quickly, and we got divorced on the 23rd of April at 2 o'clock, 1998. 4 years after we got married. We've been together 12 years. Can you imagine my surprise having walked away and done the honourable thing? I left the house, I left the car, I left all the shares, everything, and I went off to Redditch to start again entirely on my own. And then I found out from the next door neighbour he'd actually been seeing somebody for 13 years. We'd only been together for 12. He's now married to her. But hey, get over it. These things happen. So I moved to Redditch, and I meet husband number 2, a guy by the name of John. And I left J&J and I went to work in the Harley Medical, which is cosmetic surgery. I stuck it for about 3 months. I paid £4,000 to leave. because I'd done the training, I had to pay to leave if I was leaving in less than 4 years. Less than 2 years. But it was unethical. And there's no way I was putting my name to it. So I paid the £4,000 and I left. And John said, do you know what? You should come and work with me. He'd just taken over the family business. So, of course, I've always worked as a nurse and in medical sales, so why not go and work in the steel industry? I mean, they're very closely connected. So off I went into a very male-dominated environment. And it wasn't doing very well, to be honest, the business wasn't. We were probably turning over about 300,000 a year and it was struggling. And then one day he came back and he said, Michele, I've always wanted another factory. It's like, right, so what am I going to do about that? I said, well, make it happen. So that was in the February, and on the 23rd of April 2003, we set up, St George's Day again, we set up the new factory. And we took that business, and in 2007, by then we'd gone from 300,000 to 1.6 million, which I thought in the steel industry was actually quite a good return. We had an amazing life as well. I mean, in 2006, 2007, we went to St Lucia, Antigua, Grenada, Samos, Spain, France, and finally Mexico. So we just got back from Mexico, been back 2 weeks. And he'd been off to play golf, and I walked into the kitchen, he'd come back, I said, good day, love. Yeah. Did you win? Yeah, good game of golf. He said, yeah. He said, by the way, the marriage is over. And I'm like, what? And that was it. My life crashed. So, roll on a couple of weeks, and my mother's absolutely frantic because I've stopped eating. I'm in bits. And I can remember coming home from work and going to bed in the middle of the day, and I cried myself to sleep. I cried myself awake, and I prayed to God that if there was a God, he'd let me sleep for good, because that's how low I was. My mother came round. I'm in my 40s, I'd be 44? She came round, she sat there, I'm in my dressing gown, sobbing, and she, you need a cup of Bovril, love. Yeah, okay. So I have a cup of Bovril, and she said, listen, love, you've got 2 choices in life. You can sit down, give up and lose everything, or you can pull your knickers up and box on. I said, Mother, I'm not losing everything. She said, okay, you've got one choice, love, you pull your knickers up and you box on. So I said, right, okay, and we carried on, and John and I carried on working together. And we did really quite well until October 2007, when I suddenly found myself locked out of the business. And I'd gone from £100,000 a year to zero with a £500,000 on mortgage. Interesting. So, yeah, pull your knickers up and box on. I was currently taking all the overflow calls, so I phoned the telecoms guy and said, can you stop me taking the overflow calls for a business that I'm no longer allowed to be a part of? He said, what are you going to do then, love? I said, I've no idea. He said, have you ever thought of being a virtual assistant? I said, no. What do they do? He said, so I went sort of read up about this, it sounds all right. So I took myself off to Antigua, because that's what you do when you've got no income. Took myself off to Antigua, sat on a beach, and I read up all about it, and I thought, I'll do that. But I realised that you needed to be able to type and stuff, and I don't do that. I'm a 2-finger typist. So I thought, I'll answer phones, that's good, because nobody can answer their phones properly, and it really does my head in. So I set the business up answering phones. And it worked quite well. In fact, by 2013, I got 5 members of staff, and we were doing really well. And then I made a bad move because I trusted somebody. And I thought it was a good business decision I'd made, and it was bad. And by the time we got to the end of 2013, I was losing £3,000 a month. But I couldn't part with the staff because we were coming up to Christmas. And I became part of 4N. That was during 2013. It was not a 4N member that caused me that problem. So in 2014, we decided, pull your knickers up, box on, I'm going to take it back, we're going to make moves, and we did. And we've done really quite well from it. And I'm quite pleased as to what we've done, but there's something changed my life. And that was on the 13th of October 2014. And it was a 4M member that said, I'm going to teach you about values. I now recruit on values. I recruit my clients on values. I live my life on values. And if you want to know more about it, look up Float Your Diamonds on Google. You'll find out. But my values are honesty, kindness, and humour. They're key. Be authentic, live by your values. Am I going to get more ups and downs in life? Of course I am. I'm going to learn more about my strengths and weaknesses. Am I going to get married again? Seriously, guys, I know my weaknesses. No. I've got a cockapoo instead now. It's much better. It doesn't argue with me either. So there you go. I hope that's been a bit of an insight. But you know what? When the chips are down, pull your knickers up, box on.
Smile, be